Welcome to the Hojo on Architecture podcast. Concept and Design. Chapter 8, Communication, Story-Driven Design. In the previous episode, we focused on pedagogy, on how concepts can be taught, guided, and assessed through narrative logic in design education. But the teaching concept is only half of the challenge. A concept that cannot be communicated remains incomplete. In professional practice, in juries, in client meetings, and even in academic contexts, design survives or dies through its ability to be understood. This episode shifts the focus from formation and teaching to communication, asking a fundamental question: how do we communicate design concepts clearly, convincingly, and memorably? One of the most common frustrations among designers is the feeling that their idea is clear in their own mind, but becomes blurred when they attempt to explain it to others. Drawings multiply, diagrams increase, renderings become more elaborate, yet the concept remains elusive. This problem is rarely about presentation skill alone. More often, it signals a deeper issue: the absence of a clear narrative structure and, consequently, the absence of an integrated design language. Story-driven design addresses this gap by treating communication not as an afterthought, but as an extension of conceptual thinking itself. Story-driven design begins with a simple principle: people do not remember information, they remember stories. Human cognition is wired to process meaning through sequence, causality, and intention. When design concepts are presented as isolated ideas, they fade quickly. When they are presented as narratives, with a clear beginning, development, and resolution, they become intelligible and memorable. In this sense, storytelling is not a stylistic addition to design communication. It is its structural foundation. However, storytelling in design is often misunderstood. It is not about inventing metaphors, poetic slogans, or fictional narratives detached from the project, nor is it about decorating presentations with literary language. Story-driven design is about logical sequencing. It concerns establishing a transparent chain of reasoning linking context, interpretation, concept, spatial strategy, and experience. A good design story answers four fundamental questions in order: what is the problem? Why does it matter? How does the concept respond? What does the user experience as a result? If this sequence is broken, communication collapses. This is where the idea of integrated design language becomes critical. An integrated design language means that all elements of a project, concept statements, diagrams, plans, sections, models, renderings, and even verbal explanations, speak the same language. They do not repeat each other mechanically, but they reinforce the same narrative logic. When communication fails, it is often because different elements are telling different stories. The diagrams suggest one idea, the plans another, and the renderings yet another. Story-driven design emphasizes coherence, one narrative expressed through multiple media. In design education, students frequently equate communication with quantity: more diagrams, more images, more pages. Yet clarity rarely comes from abundance. It comes from alignment. Each drawing should function like a sentence in a larger paragraph. Each diagram should express a specific idea, not a vague atmosphere. Each rendering should function as a scene, deliberately chosen to convey a particular moment in the narrative. When design communication is approached this way, visual material ceases to be decoration and becomes an argument. Another common communication problem stems from reversed priorities. Designers often jump too quickly into visual production before articulating their conceptual narrative. The result is a presentation that looks impressive but lacks direction. Story-driven design reverses this order. It begins with the story, then asks, what drawings are necessary to tell this story clearly? Not every project needs dozens of diagrams. It requires the right ones. Communication becomes selective, intentional, and disciplined. Story-driven thinking also helps designers adapt their communication to different audiences. A jury, a client, and a user do not require the same level of detail or the same type of explanation, yet the underlying concept remains the same. An integrated design language allows the designer to adjust the depth and emphasis of the story without altering its core logic. This flexibility is essential in professional practice. A concept that can only be explained in one rigid way is fragile. A concept grounded in narrative structure is resilient. Importantly, communication is not merely about external persuasion. It also serves an internal function. Designers who articulate their concepts clearly often discover inconsistencies they had previously overlooked. Explaining a project forces the designer to confront gaps in logic, unresolved decisions, and superficial gestures. In this sense, communication becomes a form of critique. A weak concept hides behind visual complexity. A strong concept survives explanation. Story-driven design exposes this difference early in the process, allowing designers to repair problems before they become embedded in form. In pedagogical contexts, teaching communication as part of concept development has profound effects. Students who learn to explain their ideas through narrative logic develop stronger critical thinking skills. They become less dependent on subjective statements such as "I like it" or "it feels right," and more capable of constructing reasoned arguments. Presentation ceases to be a performance and becomes a dialogue. This shift empowers students, giving them confidence not only in their projects, but in their thinking. Integrated design language also bridges the gap between design intention and user experience. Users may never read a concept statement, yet they still experience the narrative. Circulation sequences, spatial transitions, light modulation, and material changes all tell a story. When communication is coherent, this story remains consistent across scales, from the abstract concept to the bodily experience of space. In this way, story-driven design aligns communication, design, and expertise into a single continuum. Ultimately, communication is not an afterthought in the design process. It is a design act in itself. A concept that cannot be communicated cannot be evaluated, cannot be taught, and cannot be remembered. Story-driven design restores communication to its rightful place at the heart of conceptual practice. By adopting narrative structure and integrated design language, designers ensure that their ideas are not only intelligent but also intelligible. Next time, we turn a critical eye toward the concept itself, identifying superficial, performative ideas and learning how to repair artificial concepts into authentic narrative frameworks. This concludes the Concept in Design, Chapter 8, Communication, Story-Driven Design. Thanks for listening. See you in the next episode.